right, and good morning, everybody. Let me make sure I have everything up here on Banner and Backbone. As I figure this out, make sure I can see you guys here in the chat. Go here. And make sure I can see the live. It says we're live, so I'm gonna assume here, give it one more refresh. There we are. All right. Pull you guys up here so I can see you. Awesome. Hello, everybody, and good morning. It is Monday, May 11th, and it is just me today. I know my beautiful bearded friend Nick. He needed a little break. We all do, and I am more than happy to give that to him today, as he very much deserves. So unfortunately, today you guys are just stuck with me, but I promise I'll make it worth your while. So, you know, this episode is titled "The United States of Surveillance," but I think that this is an important discussion. I would really like to have Nick here. So I will do for you guys what I do best, and I will let you guys know what the hell is going on in the Middle East right now and what I'm seeing, and kind of give you guys, I think, my best update. So I just got my report from this morning, and we'll go through that all together. So with all that said, I hope you guys are doing well, and we'll go ahead and let's kind of just talk a little bit about what's going on. There's a lot of discussions this morning. There's going to be a lot of hair trigger live streams about how Iran and, you know, rejected Trump, and Trump is, you know, what's the word? He's a, you know, obviously he's a loser, but he's going to throw a tantrum. You know, it's going to be the typical thing. Everyone's going to jump on the headline. Everyone's going to make a big deal about it. I think it's my job to recenter everybody and tell you guys kind of the picture instead of the going off the WAPO headline. I was getting on here and I already saw like 10 live streams basically, you know, with that kind of stuff. So I think it's important. I really think it's important that we look at this not through that reactive lens and through the long-term lens, and instead of doing this whole thing that I keep seeing. So let's go ahead and do that. Good question here in the chat. And if you guys have any questions this morning, please ask them. I want to get you guys as much information as possible. And I also want to give you guys any information that you feel that you're lacking, or you know, want to, you know, figure out, discuss. That's what I want to be here and do for you guys. So the question is from Valerie here. Curious what the U.S. casualties are at this point. You know, that's a really hard question. And the answer I want to give you is higher than what we have. I'm confident in that number, which isn't really much of a number, but it's really the only thing I can give you with any confidence. And I'm not saying that to be lazy. I'm saying that because we didn't figure out until, you know, 60 days after I was, you know, looking at Chinese satellite footage and telling people that we were absolutely bombed out of existence, you know, and on day 8 for us to get actual satellite footage from European satellite companies to actually see what these bases look like. And it looks like $5 billion in damage. You know, not even counting in repairs, sorry, and not even counting destroyed equipment. So when you're looking at over 200 buildings destroyed, many of them barracks, many of them, mess halls, these are places where you would see personnel stationed. So the actual realistic outcome, of saying, oh yeah, this is definitely, this was only 16 people dead or something, what they're saying right now is absolutely ludicrous, to say the least, because you can't hit all of these barracks and not kill more than 16 people. I mean, look at any war. If you're reporting 400 wounded, 16 is not even kind of reasonable. And the reason I can say this with confidence is look at the numbers in Ukraine. If we look at the numbers in Ukraine, something is going to kind of become very, very transparent really quick. And it's that in modern warfare, in the current wars that are being fought, you don't have that kind of distribution. You don't have that wounded to that killed. You just don't see that. So the one thing I can tell you with confidence about this entire conflict, as far as we have gone thus far, is that this conflict is a managed narrative. Okay, so this is not a war. The American people are not getting the war. They are getting a managed narrative. And there's a big difference between those two things, right? Obviously. So it's the same to say as it's the whole ceasefire without a ceasefire. I mean, we're running the Israeli ceasefire model right now. Anyone's dying from the inept care the soldiers are experiencing, I'm sure. Within 3 days of the conflict or something, I don't quote me. I can tell you this, though, that at some point early in the conflict, the Pentagon put out a immediate contract for the basically the fill-in sand walls that they use at all their bases. So, a couple days after they started getting bombed, suddenly they're like, oh crap, we need more of those shelters on immediate notice. Like, things like that tell us the story without telling us the story. And you should be worried about our troops. I worry about our troops. In fact, the first 40 plus days of this conflict, one of the things that weighed heavily on me, and still weighs heavily on me, is the knowledge that our troops are probably dying. And I firmly believe that we are not looking at dozens, at least minimum dozens, but I also believe that wounded is underreported. I believe the entire situation is underreported, that it's managed. Entire hospitals in Germany, the primary hospital in Germany for wounded had to request the more blood on short notice. They're hiring ICU nurses on short notice in Germany. These are things that tell us that they're not telling us the truth. And unfortunately, under the way the United States government works, the way our military has been set up to be less than transparent, at the very least, we don't really know. But it's much, much worse. That I can tell you. In America, we don't have the money to fix what damage has been done. And I will say this last piece, because I think it's an important caveat here that we need to discuss as well. And, that caveat is that we really don't know how much of this war is about national security and how much of this war is about them trying not to lose all of the foreign investment that's in the Middle East. There's no, this is America's Ukraine. And, Ukraine is the one who's defending. Ukraine has had, last I checked, somewhere in the realm of 400,000 casualties. Russia has surpassed 1 million. And the reason I'm saying that is not because we have a million casualties. It's because the strategy being used is the peace through strength model, and the strength model breaks in modern warfare. I see a comment here. My friend's son is on the Lincoln. I would be very worried about him in particular. That is one of the juiciest targets on the board. It is actually the target that I have highest ranked for I have ranked highest in terms of Iranian targeting. I would say it would be the Lincoln or the Bush, but Lincoln is a more symbolic president, and Iran, I think, will choose the more symbolic choice. So unfortunately, I would be exceptionally worried for him, and I will put out good energy for him. That's really the best thing I can do. We need to put pressure on the Congress. Congress needs to, stop this as an American. So very worried. Comment here, Trump makes money every day the war goes on. Absolutely. Every peacetime announcement you see, you're going to see a sell-off in oil shares. And that's none of them. That's just the way things are. The American market, I mean, free markets are a joke, right? Like, I don't see a free market. I see market manipulation on levels that is really inconceivable for most people. So absolutely, I would say that, we're definitely seeing a lot of scamming, not to mention poly market and basically betting sites. At one point I saw like $500 million was made on a Iranian war bet. So we definitely have insiders with intelligence making hedged bets on, low probability events. So, in regards there, this war is making people a lot of money. The people who do not care about the lives of our troops in the lives of United States troops, they are going to be using this in terms of the as a means to make money. So that really is, unfortunately, the situation. And I mean, I will say this domestically, I'm kind of past the point of harping up this tree every 5 minutes. It's up to Americans if they're going to take this shit or not. Just know that every second Americans do not take this shit, that the rest of the world views us in a worse and worse light. And regardless of the outcome, we will have to deal with that. So global reintegration, if that even is a thing, and I mean that, will be more difficult the longer the United States takes to sort out its own domestic shit. Not to mention the concentration camps and the cuts to U.S. aid, which actually amounts to basically that's better than, not when I say better, that passes the Holocaust in terms of efficiency, killing 9.2 million people in about 5 years across the world with cuts to U.S. aid. So things like that, the undermining of just general peace processes. So we're talking about, a ceasefire, right? If the United States is going to bomb someone under a ceasefire, what do you think that means for Thailand and a very perilous ceasefire with Cambodia? It means that if the United States can do it, so can we. It's about precedent. Before it was Russia, right? It was Russia, it was dictatorships. But when the United States does something, it changes the entire dynamic. And it's something that we all should really be considering as we're kind of looking at these things. So, in terms, I think someone said underarm tattoo. This guy's like, these are all my Dungeons and Dragons characters. I'm a huge nerd. So this is one of my Dungeons and Dragons characters, and this is one of my Dungeons and Dragons characters. But this is a half sleeve. It's Japanese from when I went to Japan. Phenomenal, beautiful place. One of the things that's kind of unique about me, and I try to kind of, it's really shaping for me as I've done a lot of traveling. And it's really upsetting sometimes when you have been somewhere and seen the beauty, and then you see your country violating that culture. So, I will say that hat on the wall right there over my shoulder, that hat is from Peru. It was one of the most phenomenal places I've ever been. Changed my life in terms of understanding history, culture, what a culture can be, how they can work with their environment and the planet. And now we see, what the United States is doing there. I've been to Ecuador as well. We know what the United States is doing there, bombing dairy farms. So, these are unfortunately, the impacts. This is the global impact we're seeing for the United States. So, there is very little, evidence for a lot of Americans of what's happening. But that's by design. That's why I try and do what I do. That's why I try and step outside of the American media as much as I try to do so. And, it's kind of one of the reasons as well. I chose to kind of try and be more independent so that I can, that I can focus on this and not kind of be sucked into that cycle that we're seeing a lot of, which is kind of what we talked about earlier, is everyone saying, oh, Trump, Iran rejected Trump. Like, that in my mind is sending the wrong message. And I kind of want to talk about why that is. And I want to really hopefully convey that to you today. So maybe you can convey to some of these other creators in your viewers who you support that, like maybe this is not the best way to go about these things. Because I do have a lot of concerns about Substack and the direction Substack is going right now. So I love this. Actually, appreciate your ability to teach. That's what I want to do. I want to teach you guys what I've learned. And I'm going to try and do more of that. Instead of reporting, I'm going to try and teach you. I'm going to try and help you understand. I'm going to try and give it to you guys in a way that is not about me trying to monopolize your viewership. I want to give you guys the tools to go out and do it yourself. And that's what I think the best thing that I can do is. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to go through my brief because Nick is not here with us. And I just, again, he's getting, if you're just getting here, he's getting a much needed and a well-deserved rest. Nick is doing more than I've seen most people do. In fact, he's doing what I think, the work of, and hello to everyone who's joining with us. He's doing everything that the work of 12 men or women, men and women, right? He's doing a ton of work. So we definitely want to make sure he takes care of himself. And so today I'm going to do kind of what I did last Friday. And I'm just going to kind of give you guys an update and he is a poet. That's right. And he's a poet. That's exactly right. So I'm going to go ahead. We'll talk about the ceasefire. We'll talk about the report I got today. And kind of you'll know a little bit more if you watch this when I put out the report later today, the update. And I did wait a couple more days because I wanted to get a little bit more because it's not really at this point, it's not a day-to-day yet. And either way, I'm not going to be reporting day-to-day. It's not sustainable. Like if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it and tell the day-to-day change, you need to be doing a lot more than just reading, the mainstream media and Reuters. You need to be literally in the actual OSINT feeds. You need to be on the X accounts. You need to be reading, 50 different sources, because when you're looking at a conflict like this, things aren't actually as they're reported. And I think that's a really important distinction to make as well, is what is reported by, Reuters is actually being reported. It's hearsay, right? A CENTCOM statement is not the truth. And that's a really important thing I want to kind of want to start and lead with here is we should be treating any statement from Israel, any statement from the United States, and yes, any statement from Iran as falsifiable immediately. You have to. You cannot treat anything as truthful. The rule is if they are a belligerent, you have to anticipate them as lying. You cannot assume that they are telling the truth. It's very dangerous to do so. So when Trump says the deal terms were bad, and an inside source from Reuters says, this is what happened, understand that, the leak, was it last week, was that U.S. officials, came out and said that Iran can have a nuclear weapon within a year again, right? The entire nuclear narrative is an excuse for the United States to continue its aggression and coercion towards Iran, because Iran was a puppet of the United States and has been treated this way since the Ayatollah and Khamenei took over and replaced it with the Republic of Iran, right? So Iran as it is today. So, again, when we're looking at this, it's not about the nuclear weapon. It's never been about the nuclear weapon. The people who actually manage the nuclear monitoring for the IAEA, they contract and entirely are dependent on Palantir. Yes, Palantalk. Palantir is the person who's the one who determines whether or not Iran is close to making a nuclear weapon. So I'm going to go ahead and leave you with that, because if you're watching this show, it's probably going to kind of change things. And I will give you one last fun fact about that. That didn't start or change before the monitoring was done by a coalition of multiple independent countries. After this was the deal that Obama brokered. After Trump came and gutted that in 2016, Palantir was then chosen to replace that void. And naturally, a lot of countries said that's probably not a good idea. But, so if you look at Trump's hostility towards Iran historically, it all goes back to kind of the same circle. And then you see Palantir begin to share intelligence with Israel. Obviously, a conflict of interest there. One country is bombing Iran. And of course, I will actually be talking about Lebanon and Gaza. I'm very passionate about us not forgetting the genocides happening all over the world. The age of genocide is alive and well. We might be seeing more genocides than we've seen historically. At the very least, we can document them better. And so, I try to avoid, I decided to cut Trump out of my life and replace it with covering things that affect people. He affects people, but not in the same way. I want to highlight the effects of his actions, not what his tweets say, his truths say, his lies, right? So let's go ahead, and I want to talk now a little bit about what's going on. So first, I want to talk about, is the ceasefire over? Fuck yes, it is over. It has been over. It has been non-functional since the 4th of May. So for those of you who maybe haven't seen the whole thing, let's talk about the bottom line here. The ceasefire was declared on April 8th. April 8th, this is 4 days after the Shareza incident, which I talked about in my last live stream, which is a really big part of this. And I recommend you go and watch that actually on my page, the Firebrand Project. It's a live stream. It's about an hour. We did a little bit of Q&A last Friday, but it is very valuable, and it will be valuable going into our discussions and just the news feed coming up here in the next weeks or so. So I encourage you to do that. So Trump declared the Iranian counter proposal, okay, because there's been proposals going back and forth this whole time, by being negotiated by our good guy, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, and JD Vance went over there and really fucked it up. Things did not go well after he visited. For some reason, they keep sending him, which means that Trump must be much worse. If you send babyface McGee over there to go and negotiate. So yes, so like yesterday, this is what everyone is freaking out about. This is why, everyone has got crazy headlines today. You're going to see a million articles about this, that, Trump declared their proposal unacceptable on May 10th, right? So we waited the weekend, the markets open up, and now it's unacceptable, right? So I don't know. You tell me. But, I will say that whether this is just more market manipulation or this is him justifying the phase 2, not really sure. I am pretty confident there will be a phase 2, which is why the ceasefire had to die. Pakistan is still the intermediary, has been acting as the intermediary. Pakistan is also currently operating a overland border trade with Iran in a closed system. No one can really see what's going on there. That system opened up, I want to say, on April 13th. And it just so happens to be in the region where there's a ton of Pakistani weapons. And I, put together an article series on that as well, talking about how I think that's a big part of the Iranian reconstitution strategy, how the Belt and Road Initiative really sets up all of this, was already pre-primed, and Pakistan's role in negotiations was established as another means of cover for a covert resupply operation, easily, and can be resupplied during wartime now, effectively through this gateway. If the United States were to bomb any part of this, they are bombing the intermediary, who is the peace negotiator. It's actually quite brilliant. So Iran can hold out for longer than 4 months. Iran can hold out, in my opinion, indefinitely. That's my opinion. I think Iran can hold out indefinitely. They have quashed any kind of internal resistance at this point. I don't think, Iran has been hanging people from cranes every day. At least to my knowledge, that's still going on. I could be wrong. There was multiple weeks where that was happening. The people of Iran are either, in with the nationalism, which gets more and more appealing the more the United States bombs elementary schools and stuff like that. Iran is not going. And thank you guys. I wanted to look a little fun today. So I appreciate someone complimenting the outfit. That's nice. Thank you. So, yes, to answer that question, 4 months, easily 4 months, no problems there for them. So after that, we've also had 2 separate engagements now, between between the United States and Iran. In fact, these have been arguably the most consequential in terms of potential casualties for the United States. It is very much something that, could be very consequential. It's different, shooting down an F-15 than it is to, hit a freaking warship with hundreds of sailors in a very compact area. And we are going to talk about that today. So bottom line, the ceasefire is dead. It is no longer functional, and there is no ceasefire. Iran has attacked the U.S. Navy multiple times. The United States has attacked Iranian military bases multiple times. Iran has attacked the UAE multiple times. I believe I saw a report today. I did see a report today saying that 2 drones were sent towards the UAE fairly in the last day. It might have been today, actually. It all blurs together, but I did see that, and it is something we're seeing. So, the aggression continues. And it is escalating. So it has been escalating since the 4th. So why did that happen at all? Well, this is actually where we start to see a cascade of events that started on May 4th. So on May 4th, this is Project Freedom, the first day of Project Freedom here. Trump announced it on May 3rd. This is a military escort operation for commercial vessels with U.S. flags, right? So the idea is they're going to send ships into Hormuz and they're going to sail the ships out of Hormuz. Okay. All right, good plan. So what's the plan for that? Oh, they're actually just going to sail ships into the Strait of Hormuz. Cool. Okay. Even though U.S. naval captains said that it was like a kill box, I said it was a kill box. Anyone who, is an analyst and has, 4 brain cells or can look at a map clearly sees it's a kill box. So that was the plan. So the USS Truxtun and the USS Mason transited Hormuz, and they came under fire. Why did they become under fire? Because Iran said that if a U.S. ship attempts to transit Hormuz, this is a violation of the ceasefire. They will be attacked. So what did they do? They did exactly that. So drones, missiles, and fast boats attacked the vessels, and it resulted in an engagement. CENTCOM claims that 6 fast boats were destroyed. I will again say that I don't know if that's true or not. We don't know if it's true or not. We know nothing is true. CENTCOM lies through its teeth. CENTCOM said that there was no damage to our bases. CENTCOM said that our casualties are low. CENTCOM said that, we rescued 2 F-15E crew and we have not seen them for over a month. They are not alive, or Trump would have a medal with his face on their chest in the Oval Office. At the very least, if we are lucky, they are being held as POWs. Of course, if it comes out that they got our pilots captured and all that stuff, again, domestically, they're suppressing a lot of information. So Apaches and Seahawk helicopters were used to attack these fast boats. And we're going to get to that. Yes, they did show stock photos of ships, and we're going to get there absolutely, because we're still on May 4th. So this is the first, and there's a little bit of conflation between these 2 events. So that's one of the reasons I want to kind of take them in order, because there is some conflation here, and I want to make sure that we have distinguished the 2. Because the first was when we saw, this is the first time we saw the engagement. This is when the ceasefire actually died. So again, they use these helicopters. They claim to have destroyed fast boats. And now Iran, at that point, claimed they struck a warship. Again, Iranian claim, IRGC claim. The IRGC has been more truthful than CENTCOM, but that does not mean they're truthful. They are very aware and are excellent at using propaganda. So I would expect them to always claim to hit something. They did ultimately kind of change that to they retreated, right? So they did not actually hit those ships. I do believe that first engagement, they were able to not, the United States was able to repel that first attack. On May 4th, we noticed AIS spoofing. This is Iran masking. What this means is Iran is masking the signal of vessel movements. And this was detected by some of my open source intelligence sources on May 4th at approximately 1500 UTC. So we're seeing information warfare, right? Intelligence warfare, electronic warfare used in coordination with drones and missiles and fast boats. That does not sound like a simple operation. So the next time they went back in, the success of the operation was that a single ship transited. So they got 1 ship out, and they probably used tens of millions of dollars in military resources, assets, interceptors, munitions, things like that. So if anything, that first exchange should have demonstrated that it was not economically possible to do that mission. Furthermore, it was paused because the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, and others said that the United States could not use their airspace for further strikes on Iran. Since then, those states have not been struck, and that is worth noting. Trump actually made a personal phone call to Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, in which he tried to convince him to let them use Prince Sultan, one of the largest air bases in the Middle East, one of the most important U.S. bases in the world, for this operation, and MBS declined despite a personal phone call from Trump. So that should tell you a lot about what's going on there. And so now we're going to kind of hop forward here to May 7th. And there's a couple important things that happened on May 7th. The first is that the special forces undercover command vessel was spotted by satellite watchers. Again, in my my open source intelligence network that I monitor, the individual who found this, they managed to find that it's the Ocean Trader, UV Ocean Trader, I believe, but it was found actually at Diego Garcia with another vessel and a destroyer, which is important because they were in the Caribbean. The transit time would have approximately taken the exact amount of time from around April 3rd, 4th, 5th to go around the Cape of Good Hope and end up where it is in Diego Garcia. So that's effectively a special operations forward staging base with everything that the troops that would have been in Iran, in Shah Reza, at that small agricultural airfield that supposedly they successfully evacuated the hundreds of troops that, that they got them out. That would be a equivalent replacement force on a timetable where they would have been doing a battle damage assessment and found that, oh my God, they killed all of our guys on that airfield and we got like nobody out. We need to replace them. That's how they would do that on short notice. So that's the first thing I think that's important we discuss. And it's a really big signal. You wouldn't send special operations reinforcements to a region if you're planning on ending a war. You would send them if you're doing the same thing Iran is doing, which is reconstituting. Iran has reconstituted up to around 70%. And this was weeks ago that, the Institute for the Study of War, CSIS, Center for Strategic and International Studies, Critical Threats Project, all of these think tanks are all saying the same thing, is that they're reconstituting. And I would allege that with this cross-border trade with Pakistan, they've probably gotten a lot of Chinese weapons as well. Probably air defense would be my guess. There has been a delivery of Chinese rocket propellant that is enough to fuel 750 solid fuel booster missiles. So Iran is probably better supplied at this point than the United States. I mean, in terms of magazine depth, you could argue U.S. has a weapons quality advantage, but I really think that's quite diminished. So on May 7th, we began another engagement. And this is the first time actually we saw them use the anti-ship missiles, which is something I've been talking about a long time, that they have been holding all of this in reserve. So on May 7th, the United States transited out of Hormuz. And this again was a perceived violation because they said they could not transit Hormuz. 3 destroyers transiting out came under fire. They used Khalij Far's anti-ship missiles, as well as Qatar cruise missiles. Iran claimed the 3 destroyers were targeted and retreated toward the Gulf of Oman. Trump tweeted on Truth Social, "No damage done, great damage," which makes me think that they hit them. And U.S. retaliatory strikes on Iran, according to OSINT Defender, one of my higher quality sources, claims that the strikes in retaliation appear to be ongoing. So as far as at least some of my sources are saying that this has not stopped since that engagement. In terms of, have we confirmed that the destroyers were not damaged? No, we have no confirmation this destroyers are not damaged. We have no reports on casualties. There is no third-party confirmation. So all we have in terms of our ships are not damaged is that CENTCOM put out a slideshow, and I'm not kidding, a slideshow of stock imagery of the ships in the ocean, no video, nothing. I mean, they literally took ships or pictures from literally that could be anything, and they put up a slideshow and a great comment here. Whatever he says, we can believe the opposite is more likely. That's absolutely true. So, we cannot verify with any confidence whatsoever that they did not hit those ships. I am of the belief at this point that because of the reaction we've seen from CENTCOM, the denial and the silence, that it could have been a successful attack. They did use the anti-ship cruise missiles, and Iran, it's in their best interest to let the United States lie until somebody like me or one of my open source intelligence sources or anyone else who does something like me finds the evidence, and then they have to deal with that domestically. The silence on Iran's part, I believe, is intentional, because when we find out on our own, it's much more impactful, because then it becomes less about Iran's fault and more about them lying to us about what they're doing. And I have to say, they did say what was going to happen. So we're likely to see the truth in a Lego video. Exactly. Just like Iran was the person to tell us that a KC-135 went missing off the coast of the UAE and declared an emergency before disappearing off of flight radar. Okay, so in terms of casualties, if that plane did go down in the ocean, that means 6 more are dead, because the Air Force does not give KC-135 tankers parachutes for whatever reason. Why? So this is kind of where we saw on the 6th. And this is, again, let's look at the timeline. So the engagement happens on the 7th. The ships translate, and on the 6th, Iran's Persian Gulf Strait Authority says that vessels from sanctioning countries will not be allowed to transit, which means that any country that is sanctioning them do not get transit. Again, this is part of a coercive architecture. If you're, aligned with the United States, you don't get transit, right? So it's this kind of like, we're not unreasonable. It's America who's unreasonable thing that they're doing. On May 10th, Artesh spokesperson, who speaking for Iran, said that such vessels will face problems. So we are the bad guys of the world right now. This flag is a symbol of hate and is destroying the world order. I fly it because I believe that I have to fly it to symbolize that that is not what I believe that flag should stand for. But it is a signal of hate, oppression, and it is responsible at least for the death of 9 plus million people by 2030, because of U.S. aid cuts, thanks to Elon Musk. Elon Musk directly gutted U.S. aid. That's like single-handed genocide. But to be fair, the government let him do it. So the United States did do that, and we're almost halfway to 2030 now. So, we're at 2 million unnecessary deaths. So, that's the United States, unfortunately. I do not endorse it. I don't believe in this government. So I'm not the only one. So Iran is using Hormuz right now as a sanctions busting leverage mechanism. You pay in geopolitical concessions, you get access. It's really that simple. So let's talk about the Houthis really quick. What's going on in Bab el-Mandeb? Bab el-Mandeb is open. However, it's very close to being closed. And the United States actions here, the Houthis have been very patient. There's a reason I believe this is true. And it's because the art of war says the one who is patient is the one who is going to take home the cake. And Trump and his freaking Whiskey Pete here are not patient people. And they have no appreciation for soft power. So they are peace through strength. I'm Pete Hegseth. I'm the biggest crusader. I'm gonna take everything. Hey, Peter. He kind of sounds like Joe to me. I don't know why. I just think he sounds better as a Joe from the Family Guy here. Hey, Trump. I want to bomb. We're gonna sail through Hormuz, and we're gonna win. Anyway, the Houthis have not done anything yet, but this is the highest threat posture we've seen since October of 2025, when they, interrupted billions of dollars in world trade. So Hormuz isn't already bad. It's going to get worse if they go ahead and close that. The Houthi deputy foreign minister, Hussein al-Azi, said if Sana'a decides to close Bab el-Mandeb, all of mankind and jinn will be powerless to open it. So, you know, I firmly believe they mean that. And the USS Gerald R. Ford, I'm now hearing, has been deployed again to the Red Sea. A Houthi military expert has said that Yemen reserves the right to send messages without warning. You know, yeah, it's not as good as it was. It's not as good as it was, and I apologize. I kind of lost it there in terms of the voice. So not as good as my Trump voice. I know it could be better. So, you know, there's unconfirmed reports of maritime clashes between the Ford and Yemeni forces. I have a small, and again, this is just an inkling. This is not a fact. This is not me alleging anything. This is an inkling that it wasn't a laundry room fire at all that caught the Ford on fire. I would say that now is a good time to be stocking up. You know, that is how it is. Unfortunately, I've been stocking up on just about everything. So we are getting to that point. Absolutely. So the things we want to watch out for Bab el-Mandeb to see if that happens is if Gulf Arab states formally join any U.S.-Israeli offensive operations. This is one of the reasons that you definitely probably won't see them do that, because a lot of them, their last-ditch hope, like Yanbu for the Saudi Arabia, which has directly engaged in negotiations with the Houthis, require that access to export their oil still. So if we see U.S. escalation, particularly any kind of larger scale ground operation, not unsimilar to what they were doing at Karg Island, but I don't think they'll do it. But then again, you don't really know. What I do know is if they do it, it's absolute suicide, and they will get those troops killed. A Saudi Houthi framework collapse, which is kind of what I was just talking about, because they do have a framework, as well as a signal from the IRGC to the Houthis requesting their engagement. So, you know, we have a lot of tankers already in terms of energy. 30 super tankers have been rerouted from Hormuz to Yanbu. So this is what's compensating for global energy price collapse. Prices rising is that exactly. So imagine if that is closed and 30 super tankers worth of fuel is delayed. A super tanker travels like maximum 12 knots. It takes them months to get anywhere. So when the last tankers stopped showing up, and the last tankers arrived sometime in mid-April to the United States, at least from like Hormuz. Yes, these are the Yemen Houthis, correct. Is World War III on the way? I can't say. I don't think World War III would be collective. I don't think that the world actually has enough weapons for World War III, at least not World War III in the way we think about it. I think the world has kind of capped at what it can do in terms of natural resource extraction. Like, I don't think a World War II scale war is possible, at least in terms of the weapons we have. If that was going to happen, it would look very different. And, you know, it would look more like Ukraine, which in and of itself is kind of terrifying to think about. But I don't think we're there yet. I think we're more likely heading towards a multipolar world. For a long time, it was unipolar. The United States pretty much dictated the global outcome, right? So whatever happens, that's what the United States wants, whether that's through soft power and sanctions, whether that's through stationing a bunch of missiles, you know, right next to your in your neighboring country, or, you know, offering the nuclear deterrent. That is how the United States extracted these things, and it was a balance of soft and hard power. Basically just throwing soft power out the window and using coercion against allies has effectively destroyed the United States bargaining power. And the actions in Iran, especially supporting Israel as heavily as they have been, is going to cause, unfortunately, pretty much we're looking at a multipolar world. So probably China in, you know, Asia, potentially the United States in Latin America. They like that in the Western Hemisphere, but I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think that Canada and Mexico are routing around. I think if we're going to see another, it would be kind of like a little bit of tug of war between kind of the Canada, Mexico, and the United States. But I don't think the United States, I have genuine concerns as to whether or not we can actually defend ourselves if China decided to launch large-scale missile attacks. I found this out the other day. In 2024, the United States AWACS fleet, the plane that was destroyed at Prince Sultan that made headlines, was at 55.8% readiness of a fleet. That was at 16 aircraft. So that means that if one was destroyed and they moved at least 4 to the Middle East, which means that they moved, if we're talking about 2024, half of the fleet, and one was destroyed, you can do the math, but that's terrifying because these are the aircraft that are supposed to be able to detect incoming threats. So it just goes to show that I think we're actually reaching a point here where this war is a genuine threat to the United States national security, which is something that I don't think anyone is really discussing. But it is something that if we lose a lot of these things, we're at the U.S. fleet's at 45% naval surge capacity. So we can say we have 200 plus ships. How many we have in dry dock, again, another discussion. How many aircraft carriers do we have? Sure, we have 11. Around 4 are in dry dock right now. Will be there for the foreseeable future. The Ford, our newest aircraft carrier, just caught on fire, tens of millions of dollars in damage. And we have 2 of our operational aircraft carriers currently sitting in, just outside of a kill box. So, there's really a lot of concern there in terms of our vulnerability as a country in the United States that I think is really underreported right now. So let's talk a little about what's happening with the UAE, because it's a really important point here. So Iranian attacks on the UAE have been the most significant out of all of the Gulf states. Since February 28th, there has been 551 cruise ballistic missiles intercepted. 29 cruise missiles have been intercepted. 2,265 drones have been intercepted. 13 have been killed, including 2 of the UAE armed forces, and 230 people have been wounded across 31 nationalities. 31 nationalities. Okay, so a lot of people, particularly India, work in the UAE for their energy industry, right? It's not the most populated country in the world. So you do have a lot of people who are foreign nationals that work there. In the last 72 hours, Iran struck the ADNOC operated tanker with 2 drones in Hormuz. That was on the 5th. And this is a violation of a United Nations Security Council resolution. Ooh, yeah, because Trump wants to defund the United Nations. Okay. On May 4th and 5th, there was a fire at the Fujairah Oil Facility attributed to a drone strike, which injured an Indian national. On May 10th, the UAE, so I was saying this earlier, intercepted 2 drones with no casualties. They did change their schools from the 4th to the 5th to remote learning. Iran has also struck Buka in Oman, which is Iran's own diplomatic back channel. So, it's Iran sending a message. And to me, the message is we don't give a shit about negotiations. So when Trump says, what he says, the terms are unacceptable. Unacceptable. Yeah, okay, dude, there was no terms. Don't you get it? This is why I'm saying earlier, people are saying the wrong thing. There was no terms. There is no peace. And in a perfect world, people don't speak on this shit without actually looking at what's happening behind the scenes, because it leads to a false narrative. It makes people think that there was peace to begin with, instead of realizing that this has been a reconstitution window and we should be focusing on making sure they don't start phase 2. That is where I'm saying people, and you should pressure creators that you see doing this to stop doing that. In my mind, it is actually a danger to the troops. We need to be focusing not on this, but stopping that instead of talking about his failed peace talks. So why is Iran pounding the UAE right now? There's a couple reasons, and it's actually kind of confusing because the UAE was the biggest help. It was the most help to Iran in terms of avoiding U.S. sanctions. They were able to route billions in terms of money, billions of dollars in money through the United Arab Emirates. They actually helped supply the RSF in conjunction with the UAE. Here's a couple other reasons. There's really 6 layers that I've identified here. The first is military utility. The UAE hosts 2 of 8 United States THAAD batteries, and they have destroyed multiple of those radars in the attacks in the first phase of the conflict. So that's more Iranian missiles that are going to reach their targets. And the THAAD radar is capable of detecting these missiles, 10s, 20 minutes plus in advance, right? This is a huge boon. This is how you go from reacting to putting together a plan. And that's not something that can be, there's no amount of money. Actually, the price tag on that is $5 billion, right? Because those radars were hit almost on the first days that we saw those were hit. The GCC, the Gulf Cooperative Council, the loudest voice against Iran's actions has been the UAE. The UAE foreign minister told Rubio the UAE is prepared for war to last at least 9 months. The UAE lobbied for a UN resolution to forcibly reopen Hormuz. No one is going to open Hormuz. They are being punished and they do have the cooperation. They have been cooperating with Israel. They absolutely have. And that's an important point as well. Particularly if you're wondering about the specifics, you should look into Somaliland and what's happening there. If you've been watching me for a long time, you should be well aware of that situation. They're punishing the UAE for hosting forces. Iran warned any move against Abu Musa, Greater Tunub, or Lesser Tunub. These are UAE-controlled islands that Iran has occupied since 1971 or claimed to be UAE islands. This is a massive retaliation. So they're basically saying if the United States does anything to these islands, which are serving as Iranian bases, it will be way worse than things have been before. And I think they will be the example. They're talking to China a lot. And I think it's part of kind of this weird it's a weird collaborative pressure strategy to break up OPEC, as well as kind of undermine U.S. regional security architecture. So Dubai was part of the primary conduit, like we said, kind of for Iranian sanction evasions. And you would think that they would go easier on them, but they're not. So this really goes to show Iran is saying it doesn't matter what you did for us before. We own Hormuz. Hormuz is Iranian sovereign control. The preempt coalition formation. This is where Iran must make UAE participation in Strait operations too costly before coalition can consolidate, right? And again, this is where we're seeing pick a side, right? And the side to pick has the other countries, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, they've said, nah, we're done. You can't use our airspace to strike Iran. That is picking a side. That's saying we can't expel your troops easily, but you can't use the airfield. So we're not going to allow you. Trump personally called MBS, and it did not change that outcome. So I want to talk about UAE and China. We kind of briefly talked about this. China is making a long-term hedge here to manipulate energy and be the influencer in the Gulf, which we saw before, which is kind of the ultimate goal. That was the United States. That's OPEC. That's the petrodollar. We're looking at the petro yuan, and that is not something that's not outlandish. I wrote an article on it. So if you're interested in that and trying to understand what's going on, I've written and been writing about this dynamic. I'm trying to help you understand what exactly is happening. I don't need to live stream every day to do that. What I need to do is take the time and the research to make it understandable for you guys. So that's, a lot of it too is, instead of rapid fire reporting, and it does cost me in views and subscribers like it does, but I would rather tell the truth and not feed, surface level reporting where I can't give you the depth that you need to understand. So that's kind of one of those reasons you've seen less of me. And I'm going to try and do more of this as well. So, next time you see me and Nick will be here, but this is kind of just me filling the time and trying to give you guys as much information as I can. And there will be an article out today. That is a promise. So we'll kind of keep going here though. So in May 2026, Chatham House, and this is a big deal. Chatham House is one of those think tanks that has a lot of clout, and they've corroborated a lot of the things that I predicted back in, February about how this conflict would go down. They've been one of those to validate a lot of those things, and they agree with an outcome that I have also pretty much stated well in advance of this as well, which is China wins this war regardless of the outcome, because every Gulf state now knows U.S. protection has limits, right? So that's a big deal. That's where we're kind of at right now. Iran strikes on the UAE are accelerating a UAE Emirati China pivot because the only one with the leverage to get Iran to stop striking is China. That's their economic lifeline. Without that, we're going to see Iran, struggle a bit. But I personally think that Iran and China are in collaboration. Aragachi, the foreign minister, visited China. I want to say it was on the third or the 5th. Yes, Chatham House is a think tank in London. I like their work. They're pretty smart. And a former U.S. official, Amos Hochstein, said Iran will control the Strait of Hormuz forever. The UAE knows this and is hedging accordingly. The United States, if it was going to open Hormuz, would have opened Hormuz. The only level of escalation left for the United States to open Hormuz would be a ground invasion. Anything short of that would not work. And I don't know. I can't say they won't do it. I wish I could. But just to give you guys an idea of how all-encompassing this has been in terms of that have denied the United States airspace. It's a pretty big list and it's growing. So Spain has closed its airspace and barred the use of its Rota and Morón bases. Italy has denied landing rights at Sicily base. Austria has rejected several U.S. requests and cited military neutrality. France refused overnight overflight for military resupply flights to Israel. I will also note that Israel canceled all of its weapons contracts with France, and it buys more weapons from France than anybody else. I think Israel did this so that they could say they broke up with France before France broke up with Israel. France is going to have plenty of purchasers for those weapons. Europe is rearming. It's not like France doesn't have buyers. So, that's really pretty significant. And these first countries here were NATO allies and European allies. It's a big deal to have Europe, doing this here. Saudi Arabia, they suspended access to Prince Sultan after the Project Freedom announcement because they knew what the outcome would be. The UAE did not, and they got bombed. Jordan rejected the use of territory for strikes at the war's onset, and they have been fired on less than others, still fired on. Qatar denied territory use for Iranian operations, and Qatar was actually one of the first countries to begin this process. Turkey denied airspace use, and the foreign minister held calls with its Iranian counterpart. Iraq refused U.S. access. It's also one of the front lines in terms of this conflict, where Iranian-backed militias, Kataib Hezbollah, and the PMF, Popular Mobilization Forces, are both fighting and attacking U.S. bases. Camp Victoria in the UAE was the site of the first successful FPV strike on a U.S. aircraft, as well as the United States radar. And that video came out. I shared that the day of. It's pretty remarkable to see what FPVs can do to these militaries. And it goes to show that, you know, a ground war would be appalling. And furthermore, we're seeing that in Israel with the IDF getting its butt whooped by Hezbollah. So who is actually on the side of the United States? Israel, Bahrain, and the UK is still allowing them to use their bases for defensive operation only. The UK has a big soft spot for Israel. If you're in the UK, I would recommend that Keir Starmer stops being a little weenie and gets with the program and flips the bird to Netanyahu, because it looks really bad. And I love you guys. I think you're better than us, but you guys also have Palantir all up in your shit, and you guys got to check out what's going on, because I don't want you to have to worry about your flag the way I'm worrying about mine. Let's talk about Israel, what's going on with the EU and the United States, and Lebanon briefly here. So the European Union, or the EU-Israel Association Agreement, 26 of 27 EU states voted to partially suspend that agreement on April 15th to 17th, right? So Hungary vetoed, and then after that, Orban lost. And then the new leader of Hungary said he would arrest Netanyahu if he landed in Hungary. So they have lost their last coercion instrument in the EU. Israel, it's a big deal. Germany and Italy, were blocked. So blocked at the April 21st foreign ministers meeting. Spain asked EU Commission on May 6th to activate blocking statute against US ICC sanctions. EU versus US are now institutionally confronting again over this situation. France and Sweden co-signed a letter to at least exclude West Bank settlement products, right? And we actually are starting to see sanctions on Israeli settler groups, which is big deal, big deal. So, Peter Magyar's government is definitely going to be influential here in Hungary to see if they still have that coercion instrument in the EU. So in Lebanon, what's going on? The ceasefire is officially in place, but an Israeli ceasefire is tantamount to a continued genocide. So we've not really seen any changes there. And I think that it's going to continue. On May 7th, we now have record intensity airstrikes again. They're literally bombing villages off the map that have been there for thousands of years, leveling villages in Lebanon that have been there for thousands of years, hundreds of years. It is cultural erasure, and Israel has passed every single moral boundary conceivable that I can think of. So Israel is a terrorist rogue state, and the world is kind of being forced to admit that. The IDS struck dozens of southern towns, and they ordered 12 villages to evacuate, which means they're planning on leveling those villages. This is what they did. If you're familiar with the Nakba and all of that, it was the cultural erasure operations that displaced nearly 750,000 people during Israel's foundation, killed tens of thousands, So Netanyahu on the 10th says the war in Iran with Iran is not over. Iran's enriched uranium can be done physically. Removal from Iranian territory. So again, this is what I'm saying. They don't have a clean win condition other than seizing uranium and declaring victory. That's all they have, because they can't do anything else. But the suggestion that we're seeing Israel talking about a ground war, if they're following suit like they did in the beginning, and this could be a little canary in the coal mine for us, folks. And I think it's something that we need to take seriously when he says that. Israel is conducting sustained ground operations, demolitions in southern Lebanon, bulldozing everything they take. They even there's even a picture of an Israeli soldier taking a sledgehammer to a statue of Jesus. And then when it hit social media, they put back a nicer statue and said like, "Oh, we're so sorry. But you can't apologize for the genocide." Like, come on now. I don't even think your apology would be accepted, I think. But, even prediction markets, which is another thing altogether. I could have made so much money in prediction markets, but I chose not to because I view them as amoral, because betting on the death of other people is really fucked up. And if you do that, or know someone who does that, you should tell them that they're betting on the death of others and that that's fucked up. Lebanon's Nabi Berri says that they will not enter negotiations until fighting fully stops and Israel withdraws. So the agreement that kind of was there, that kind of looked like we were going to see a winding down of the situation in Israel, with Lebanon, with the Lebanese government maybe turning on Hezbollah a little bit. I think that we have seen that ship sail. And this is Palantalk, so I want to talk about this because Palantir is the United States government, and this is a very important part that I want to talk about, that I added for today in particular because we are on Palantalk. And it's that Palantir is losing its government, its influence in Europe. That Palantir is now being recognized as an instrument of United States coercion, and that Palantir has a vested interest in destroying democracies. So bottom line, we're seeing some countries cancel contracts, but some are growing. And, it's important to note that, this is where I think we should be seeing, if you are in one of these countries, you need to be pushing back against your government's involvement with Palantir. Switzerland, they terminated a contract after 9 rejections over 7 years. The Swiss Army concluded Cloud Act data risk cannot be technically prevented, right? Because Switzerland has protections on its own citizens. Particularly, they have data privacy laws, which is something that every country should have, so that countries can't, steal your data and use it to surveil you like they're doing here in the United States with Palantir. Germany's Bundeswehr rejected a military cloud project. The VP Daum, no employee of a foreign industrial company should have access to national databases. He is correct. The Netherlands, the AVP, they divested 825 million euro in Palantir shares in April 26th. Big deal. Cited socially responsible mandate. Because of Palantir's likes to ICE and the Israeli military. The UK's NHS break clause review is underway, and it will be available in spring of 2027. That's 210 million to 330 million pounds have already spent, but not canceled. At the same time, you're also looking at France looking for a DGSI renewal for 3 years. So that is unfortunate there. The UK Ministry of Defense has extended their contract to 2029. with the largest ever. And there was no competition in terms of tender. So again, my friends in the EU, pretty please, in the UK and France, pretty please, put some pressure on your governments. It's for your democracy. Poland, they did sign a letter of intent in October 2025. That said, a lot has changed since October 2025, and we could see a cancellation there very easily, particularly because the United States is pulling out of Europe. And Palantir in the United States are basically the same thing. In Ukraine, Brave 1 was a battlefield AI data room launched in 2026 off of Palantir infrastructure. In this case, Ukraine is using every tool at their disposal. I'm not really going to fault them there. They're literally being invaded. So that's kind of that's what I have for you guys today. And I hope that you guys feel like you understand a little bit more than, that's what's happening. And there's a question here from YouTube that I saw here. And if you're still with us, Marvel Avengers, I didn't see that chat here, and I'm going to say I want to answer this question. Professor Zhang says 1.2 billion people are going to die because of famine. Do you believe that's going to happen? Sorry, 1 to 2 billion. I do. I do. I do believe we are going to see a famine of incredible proportions. This is not due just to U.S. aid, though. This is due to the impact of climate change, climate collapse. I don't think we can call it change anymore. There is something called, and I'm acutely aware of this because of where I'm located geographically here in Southern California, what is being called the Super or Godzilla El Nino. And I'm actually working on a piece explaining kind of what all of that is. In essence, it is a confluence here of many, many things happening simultaneously. And it's one of those things that really highlights how much we don't understand and how many assumptions we've made in science. And you pair that with the disregard of governments around the world and their decision to overinvest in things like AI and, liquid natural gas. And it's been and has been about money this whole time. And it will continue to be about money. So, I've got about 13 minutes left here. I want to open this up to you guys. If you have any questions or anything like that, before we go ahead and, wrap things up here. But I do definitely want to, have a moment to give you guys the opportunity to ask these questions and, figure out what we got going on at the moment here. So, fossil fuel industry, exactly. So if you guys look kind of here on the screen, I'll go ahead and put my QR code off to the side. You guys can go ahead and see that if you want to go ahead and, visit me and my page over there. And then at the end here, I want to make sure here that you guys see. We'll talk about Banner Backbone and Nick and all that stuff here shortly. But I do want to give you guys a couple minutes to ask questions. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and please ask those in the chat now. Other than that, there will be an article coming out with pretty much everything we talked about here today in writing. So, I want to offer that to you guys as well. But yeah, I think that all told here is we're taking this moment and, looking at what the world is going towards. Is the war in Iran about weakening the Houthis? The Houthis that Israel went to war instantly in Lebanon. And I see a link here says, fact check, no evidence that the photos rescued U.S. airmen are authentic. Yeah, so that's exactly right. I mean, I haven't seen anything. And I don't intend, we're not going to see anything. I think that the Houthis and, and this is, unless you're talking about Hezbollah as well, all of the proxies right now are probably they're more than effective. They are not going to have any issues. Hezbollah has done nothing but ramp up its use of FPV drones, particularly fiber optic drones. They have access to what Russia is supplying them, and Russia's industry has leaned heavily into fiber optic drones. If you've seen the pictures of Ukrainian fields with that kind of shimmering string covering an entire field, that is fiber optic cable, and it cannot be jammed. It cannot be intercepted with electronic warfare. And I do not know the names of the airmen. That said, there is a tail number. So I'm sure that, in the pictures, there's a tail number. We know that it came from Lakenheath. It was a European station squadron. Do we know what their names are? I don't think so. I bet you the family does, but I bet you that family is facing all kinds of gag orders and pressures not to say anything. So, in that regard, I think we're going to know less and less unless the family comes out and says so. But I don't really think we will know. In terms of Hezbollah and weakening Hezbollah, Israel has spent the last decade making everybody. Actually, Israel spent the last 50 years since its inception making everyone in the Islamic world, Palestinian world, hate them. And the bottom line for Israel is this war is existential. And no one's outright saying this. And I get that a lot of people are worried about like their credibility, but I'm not really afraid. Can they cut the cable? It's hard. It's hard to cut the cable, but a lot of the best ways to stop these drones, actually in Ukraine, you'll see this, is with a shotgun. So Israel has started to just give everybody like bird shot. Again, what Ukraine has done. But the other good way is you freaking grab a stick and you chuck it somewhere else. Israel deployed something called like the Iron Net or something, but they're using Iron Dome interceptors on these FPV drones. So we're talking about millions, tens of $50,000 to like 500. It's just absolutely insane. And Israel is getting messed up. They're getting messed up in Lebanon. It's really bad. Every day there's a report of, another FPV drone strike. And it's going to show that the fat and happy modern military does not work in modern warfare. And Ukraine is the foremost, most effective military in the world because they have actual combat experience in what will be modern warfare. And China has done exactly what I would expect them to do, which is lean very heavy into drone technology. And again, China has this luxury and will continue to have this luxury of preparing without any threat. So, was the war about weakening Hezbollah? I'm sure that the concern is about Hezbollah, but Israel is surrounded. They have no popular support, and the world is no longer interested in having anything to do with Israel. And it turns out their best friend, the person who is supposed to bail them out, is impotent, just like Donald Trump. And, I still wonder how an injured man can climb 7,000 feet with little oxygen. He didn't. Or maybe he did. Maybe they got him, right? But the thing is, I don't think they got off the airstrip. The first part may have been true. Honestly, the best lie to tell is a white lie. If there's an inkling of truth, it's easier to tell. Maybe they did rescue him initially. But my question about Shareza is who got off the airstrip? And I've looked at the satellite footage. I've looked at the wreckage. If you watch my live stream from last Friday, I talk about it in depth. I have a lot of doubt, skepticism. And, the statement about the uranium goes to show that this really is the consensus among the people sitting in the, situation room, that the only clean exit is to seize uranium. We cannot open Hormuz. We don't know. And I mean, if we find out that those 3 destroyers were hit, if they actually hit a destroyer with a anti-ship missile, that could easily up our casualty count dozen or so, tens of wounded. So that's kind of where I think we're at. If there's any more questions, I probably have time for about one more. So if you guys have the opportunity, please go ahead and scan this QR code. I'm going to leave it up for one more minute, and then I'm going to go ahead and put our banner and backbone up here, and we'll talk a little bit about banner and backbone. We'll talk a little bit about, everything going on as well. They're still getting billions of our tax dollars, of Germany's tax dollars, and a lot of European countries are still feeding Bibi. That's true. That's true. And one of the things about Israel is that it's been deeply entangled in all of these foreign governments. It's part of Israel's policy, but it starts in the open. But, the biggest thing we're seeing is like the cancellation of those French weapons contracts. Those are the things that are going to be happening more quietly. And Israel has been losing. Iran has been hitting Israel's defense manufacturing. They have been hitting those facilities where they make those interceptors. Israel ran out of interceptors first. They're pretty much out of Arrow. I mean, I was reading the other day that, this was weeks ago, that they were down to like 8 Arrow 3. Right. So they're using the wrong interceptors for certain missiles because they are trying to conserve inventory. But the only escalation once you reach a certain point is to stop the actual thing shooting at you. If you can't intercept it, and if you can't, the only way to do that is to actually invade. Israel is, they're going to throw everything at the wall. I firmly believe they're going to throw everything at the wall. I think that this is existential for Israel, and I think they know it. That is my opinion. That is my belief. I'm not always right, but I, have a pretty good track record right now. So take it with a grain of salt, but, I am not entirely talking out of my ass here. So if you want to support this show, if you want to support the network that brings you Palantalk, and you get to see me and Nick every week, support Nick's work. This is Nick's project. This is Nick's baby, and it's growing so much. Please consider subscribing to Banner and Backbone here, and supporting everything that Banner and Backbone does. It's really important that, we continue to engage as a citizenry, that we continue to advocate for our civil rights, for our civil government, for a government that represents the people and their interests and not corporations. Banner and Backbone is about civic engagement. It's about bringing you guys information. It's about getting you guys involved. And that's what Banner and Backbone is all about. So please go ahead and make sure that you're subscribing to Banner and Backbone on whatever platform you're watching on today, or whatever else, whether you're here on Substack, make sure you click on that little chyron in the top left, where you're going to see the BNB icon. You can subscribe there as well. So he is not here, but I'm going to put this up anyway. Make sure that you go and support Nick. Nick is doing so many important things right now. Nick is a good friend of mine. Nick is he's a real patriot. He's a real American. And he's going to continue to do that. He's taking this day of rest so he can continue to fight for democracy. But more importantly, at sick of this shit, he takes care and he advocates for people. He advocates for those with chronic illness. He advocates for not sucking, fighting toxic masculinity. He's doing all of the right things. And I am so proud of Nick and his, passion to keep fighting and to really give his whole heart, soul, and being in terms of really getting that information out to people. So, please make sure you go ahead and support him there. And then one more time here, I will go ahead, put this up on the screen. If you want to subscribe to any of my social medias, you can do that by scanning this QR code. This QR code will take you to my link tree. There you can make donations. You can subscribe as well and find the X account, TikTok, stuff like that. I don't post on all of those, but when I do get to posting on those, that way you're subscribed or following so that you'll get the information on each of those platforms. So I hope you guys go and join me there as well. All of that said, we just hit that 90-minute mark, and I want to thank all of you for tuning in today. And I, once again, really hope that you found this episode of Palantalk helpful, that you were able to get some information you're going to be able to take forward. And of course, I will be putting out this article I was mentioning later today, and it'll be in a written format as well for those of you who prefer to come back and reread, or either way, make sure you check that out when it drops. So make sure you're subscribed so you catch that article when it comes out today. But as always, it is so good to see each of you, and make sure you take care of yourselves. Make sure you go outside, go on a walk, breathe some air, touch some grass, and spend some time with someone you love. Listen to that song you like, because the world's going to keep turning, but that doesn't mean you can't find joy in those little things. So thank you for watching Palantalk, where we talk tech, no fascism. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.